Today's results show that Wisconsinites believe in democracy and the democratic process.
My opponent is a serial liar.
You all are not going to believe just the sheer hypocrisy that I'm going to show you in this story. So, in a huge victory for both Wisconsin and democracy, liberal judge Janet Protasiewicz defeated 59-year-old Manbaby Dan Kelly to become the fourth liberal judge on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, forming the majority. So, this, of course, was the Supreme Court election in Wisconsin. The implications are clearly on gerrymandering and on abortion rights. I'll get to a bit of that in a second here. Here is Janet. This was Janet Protasiewicz. This was declared at 9:56 p.m. Eastern Time. So there is Janet Protasiewicz. Here is the result here. Massive victory, 55.52 to 44.48. Dan Kelly, this guy is a piece of work. I'm going to get to his speech. I'm going to get to some of his decisions. I'm going to get to just the amazing hypocrisy. But we're going to get there. So Antonio Arellano here writes, early data shows that Wisconsin Supreme Court election had the highest youth turnout. Once again, youth came out to vote for a Wisconsin spring election ever in history. Organizations like Next Gen America are turning first-time Gen Z and millennial voters into lifelong voters. So they write here, early data shows that the youth came out. I think they have some more data here. Most importantly, this primary result shows an unprecedented level of youth voter retention between elections. In the Madison ward that contains the two largest first-year dorms, young people demonstrated a nearly 8 times increase from 2019 in voter retention from a general to a spring primary. And at one of the main polling locations for UW-Madison freshmen, over 500 votes were cast, a major jump from 2019 when only 44 votes were cast. So good to see, the youth turning out once again. And there's more on that. Okay, yes, youth turnout, very important. I'm very excited to get to what I want to show you here about Dan Kelly. So we will get there very shortly. But on abortion rights, so this is why this race mattered so much. Not just for Wisconsin, by the way, but also nationally. The state Supreme Court is expected to rule on access to abortion in the state in the coming months. Wisconsin has a 19th century law on the books that bans the abortion in almost all circumstances that will eventually land in front of the state Supreme Court. In the interim, providers in the state have stopped performing the procedure. So abortion is essentially banned right now in Wisconsin. This will hopefully flip it back to it being legal again. And the other important issue, the race could also have significant impact on the state's congressional and legislative lines, so around gerrymandering. Despite the state being close to 50-50 in most statewide elections, Republicans are on the cusp of supermajorities in both chambers, and the state's congressional districts have a firm tilt towards the GOP. So despite there being very equal voters, in fact, Wisconsin largely, it's more Democrats vote, but because of the way the lines are drawn, Republicans are near a supermajority, despite the amount of Democrats voting in the state. So here's a little GIF by New York Times. You see 2008, I think it was, to 2016, just how it changed and what that did to the state when it was redistrict. So the way this works, to be clear, as they write here, the new maps efficiently concentrated many Democratic voters in a relatively small number of urban districts and spread out the remainder among many districts in the rest of the state. So the way they drew the lines, it drew them so that where Democratic voters were, they ensured that was like a single district, and that wasn't split up in any other way. And then, where other Democrats are spread around, they split those voters up so that Republicans win those districts. So they extend the district out to grab Republican votes. It is so disgusting, and it's clear when you see the amount of Democratic voters compared to Republican voters, how it's clearly undemocratic when you are drawing lines to push back or to refute the will of the majority of the voters in the state. So hopefully there will be a case where this comes up and they'll be able to redraw those lines. Here is I'm going to show you a quick clip here from Janet Protasiewicz's speech, and then I'll get to Dan Kelly and this amazingness.
Today's results mean 2 very important and special things. Yes. First, it means that Wisconsin voters have made their voices heard. Yes. They've chosen to reject partisan extremism in this state. And second, it means our democracy will always prevail. Too many have tried to overturn the will of the people. Today's results show that Wisconsinites believe in democracy and the democratic process.
All right, so standard speech there from Janet Protasiewicz. Nothing against her. She's not a politician. She's a judge. Just a speech talking about upholding democracy and being an honest voice. Let's get to Mr. Dan Kelly though, because this image alone kind of gives you an indication of how much of a loser this man is. So here he is. This is his concession speech. I guess it's a concession, but I'm going to show you how insane this is. First, let me show you the argument he is making in his speech.
I wish that in a circumstance like this, I would be able to concede to a worthy opponent. But I do not have a worthy opponent to which I can concede. This was the most deeply deceitful, dishonorable, despicable campaign I have ever seen run for the courts. It was truly beneath contempt. Now I say this not because we did not prevail. I do not say this because of the rancid slanders that were launched against me, although that was bad enough. But that is not my concern. My concern is the damage done to the institution of the court. My opponent is a serial liar. She's disregarded judicial ethics. She's demeaned the judiciary with her behavior. And this is the future that we have to look forward to in Wisconsin. We've had this laid out plainly for us. We could have the rule of law or the rule of Janet. And the people of Wisconsin have chosen the rule of Janet.
What a sore loser. What a just loser generally. You lost the race by about 10 points. You're a goddamn loser. And you cannot accept it. And the amazing part about this, he calls Janet Protasiewicz that she ran a dishonest, despicable campaign, a serial liar. Check this out. Wisconsin TV stations pull false and harassing Supreme Court candidate Kelly's ads. They had to pull this loser's ads because he was lying about Janet Protasiewicz in his ads. And he has the audacity to call her dishonest, to call her despicable, to claim she's a liar. These conservatives, the ego, the dishonesty, it knows no bounds. This is just unfreaking believable how crazy this is. So here's an example of one of the ads, and it's clear why they had to pull it. It is incredibly dishonest. It's off the wall ridiculous. But of course, stars a couple of cops. Here you go.
Sheriffs like us from around the state are supporting Daniel Kelly for Wisconsin Supreme Court. Justice Kelly's opponent, Janet Protasiewicz, is a Milwaukee County judge with a long history of letting dangerous criminals back into our streets.
Directly undermining the work of our officers and putting your family at risk. We can't afford to have judges who put their own agendas above the law. It's time we start prioritizing justice again, not politics.
They had to pull these ads because of how dishonest they are. Look at the paper clippings that they pull on her. Look at this shit. Unfreaking believable. And this guy has the audacity after stations had to pull his ads to call her dishonest, to call her despicable. Let's get to some of his past here. So Scott Walker, garbage man Scott Walker, is the one that appointed Kelly to the state Supreme Court back in 2016. This is amazing. Among the three finalists, Kelly is the only one without judicial experience. But that's who Scott Walker chose. And also check this out. There is a couple of things here from his book. A chapter which Kelly included in his application for the appointment also delivers a blistering critique of the U.S. Supreme Court's 2013 ruling striking down the Defense of Marriage Act, which had defined marriage under federal law to exclude same-sex partners. This ruling, Kelly opined, will eventually rob the institution of marriage of any discernible meaning. So he's incredibly anti-gay marriage, and he was flaunting that in his application. Also, this is also amazing. In his book, he said affirmative action and slavery differ, obviously, in significant ways. But then goes on to say, morally, as a matter of law, they are the same. Morally, affirmative action and slavery are the same. You tell me who's despicable. Also, this is a guy that wrote the deciding opinion on Wisconsin Supreme Court approves passengers carrying guns on Madison buses. What a great guy. There's also a lot more here. You can go through a lot of the links in history on Wikipedia here, but this one's amazing. Shows you his character. During his time on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Kelly came under fire for not recusing himself from multiple cases that involved organizations with which he had close ties. As one example, in the days immediately preceding the decision of Koschke v. Taylor, Kelly received $1,000 in contributions from board members of the nonprofit conservative law firm Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty that was representing the petitioners in Koschke v. Taylor. Kelly would ultimately join the majority opinion that ruled in favor of the petitioners. Kelly also opposed a petition brought by over 50 retired Wisconsin judges to strengthen standards on when judges should remove themselves from cases because of conflict of interest. Like, Wisconsin, you really dodged a bullet here. Thank goodness you have Janet Protasiewicz, who just seems like your standard liberal, judge. Is nothing too crazy here. But this guy is off the wall nuts. What a loser. And really good to see Wisconsin voters and young voters come out with supporting Protasiewicz for the correct result in this election.